The garden is just a great example of your portfolio because you have to fertilize it, add money to it, right? You got to water it, and fertilize it. That's adding money, right? We're going to put money into our portfolio. We're going to save on a regular basis. That should always be the case. And the first thing I do with that money is I put it in cash. I don't have to invest it. Just because I put money, I get this question all the time. It's like, well, I'm going to make my contribution to IRA. Where should I put it? Cash, right? That's just water. I don't, when I water my garden, I don't immediately start, doing stuff, other stuff to the garden because I just watered it. I just added water to the garden. That's it. You may not agree with the way I do technical analysis. That's completely okay. Everybody does it differently. I don't do really sophisticated, complicated analysis, right? I understand the Elliott wave analysis. I understand, candlestick charting. I understand all these things. I have a very cursory education in these things. And again, you can get very complex with technical analysis. It can go very deep. I find what I try to find are things that just work for me. That's it. I just try to find analysis that works for me and things that I can implement and things that can help me manage my portfolio better. That's all I'm trying to do. So again, if you disagree with anything I'm saying here about technical analysis and you're kind of in the weeds with it, more power to you. I will defer to your analysis, right? I'm just telling you what works for me. So we went through 3 bullish and 3 bearish setups, and that kind of is confusing, right? It's like, well, Lance, you just said this is bullish, but this is bearish. And actually some of the indicators are both bullish and bearish by themselves, right? Like the rising wedge pattern, if you break out to the bottom, that's bearish. So what do you do with that, right? Well, again, this is now where we've got to step back and we have to look at the environment surrounding the markets and go, look, this is about liquidity. It's about momentum. It's about, kind of attitude in the markets. It's about buybacks. It's about earnings. It's about flows. Those are all very supportive of the markets right now. The economic data is supportive of the markets right now. The Fed cutting rates is supportive of the markets right now. So likely if we do have a correction, it won't be a deep correction. There's no real sign of a recession on the horizon just yet. So that should mitigate downside risk to the portfolio near term. But there's certainly things that can happen that could change that. Tomorrow, something could happen. Don't know what that would be, but we have another yen carry trade blow up overnight. Tomorrow we wake up and the market's down 3%. That can certainly happen, right? We can't ignore that. So when we're at these points in the markets to where they're overbought, they're extended, they're still bullish, but there's some bearish undertones developing that says, hey, there could be some risk up there. Volatility's been rising as a good example, while the market's been going up, right? That's another one of those negative divergences that typically tells you there's some underlying stress in the market. So, this is where we go back to our gardening, right? Just, our portfolio is our garden. And as good gardeners, we need to take care of our garden. If we just, as we talked about before, if I just plant a garden and leave it, don't touch it, I won't have a garden in a few months, right? The weeds will just take it over and kill everything. So I've got to regularly go out and tend the garden, right? I've got to pull weeds. I've got to water it. And then most importantly, it's great that I grew a garden of tomatoes, but if I never go out and pick the tomatoes, they'll just rot on the vine. So what did I get out of it? I got nothing, right? And a garden is just a great example of your portfolio because you have to fertilize it, add money to it, right? You got to water it, and fertilize it. That's adding money, right? We're going to put money into our portfolio. We're going to save on a regular basis. That should always be the case. And the first thing I do with that money is I put it in cash. I don't have to invest it. Just because I put money, I get this question all the time. It's like, well, I'm going to make my contribution to IRA. Where should I put it? Cash, right? That's just water. I don't, when I water my garden, I don't immediately start, doing stuff, other stuff to the garden. Because I just watered it. I just added water to the garden. That's it. So that just goes into money market cash. Now, when I find an opportunity of something, then, I say, oh, hey, here's a plant. I'm going to add some cucumbers to my tomato garden, right? So I can make a Greek salad. So now I plant some cucumbers after I watered, right? So that's, if I find an opportunity, I can put that cash to work. But just cash. It's just the water and the fertilizer for the garden. I got to weed it regularly. I've got to make sure the weeds stay out of the garden because the weeds are vicious. They will just take over everything and they'll choke off all your plants. And by the way, I am a terrible gardener, so just don't take my gardening advice. I'm just using this as, as an example. It's a metaphor. But you got to pull the weeds, right? So that's sell the losers, right? If you have something that's not working in this environment where everything is going up at the same time, it's not going to work when the market goes down. That's a weed you need to pull out of the garden. And look, you may love the stock, you may love the company, you may love what they do. It's not working for some reason that you just don't know. Fundamental, technical, whatever it is, there's some reason it's not working. Just sell it. Doesn't mean you can't come back to it later. You can't replant that seed in the garden later. But right now it's not working. Just sell it, raise some more cash, leave it alone for now, and move on with the stuff that is working. Don't forget to, and again, don't forget to harvest, right? If you've got something that's working very well, take a little bit of profit. You don't win by never taking profits and realizing gains. And it's just like, again, with the garden, if I grow some beautiful tomatoes and I never harvest them, they'll simply just rot on the vine. So what did I get out of it? And again, this goes back to the story that I'm writing about for a couple of weeks from now about the guy that turned, 88,000 to 415 million. He never took profits and lost it all. And that happens all the time in markets. I don't want to pay taxes. Well, you don't have to pay taxes when you lose all your money. Right? Happens all the time. So don't forget to take profits. But these are just things to be aware of. Look, and a freeze is coming, right? We know that we're about to get into winter, and we're going to have freezes this winter. So you got to go out and you got to cover your vegetables. That's hedging, right? So hedge your portfolio. Look, if you don't know how to hedge a portfolio by, using, out of the money put options or whatever it is, just raise cash. Cash is a fantastic hedge for your portfolio. It will mitigate volatility. It will preserve your capital until you can figure out what else you want to do with your money, right? You don't have to do, when you talk about, hedging, everybody thinks about these really complicated strategies. I've got to do calendar ratio spreads with options and all this other stuff. No, you just raise some cash. Hedge your portfolio. Buy a non-correlated asset, buy some treasuries. Whatever, just reduce the amount of exposure you have to the equity market, and that will hedge your portfolio in and of by itself. Now, if you want to get more complicated with your hedging and, short the market against your portfolio, et cetera, that's all on you, but you don't have to get that complicated. Now, also, too, remember that none of this says you have to go out into your garden and yank every plant you have out of the garden by the roots, right? In other words, you don't have to sell everything and go to cash. Nothing in this says that. Just a regular process of gardening, right? You don't, if you're growing a tomato garden, you don't go rip them out of the ground when you harvest your tomatoes, right? You just pull the tomatoes off the vine and you let the new tomatoes grow in its place, down the road. If you rip everything out by the roots, you're not going to pretty much have any tomatoes after that. So that is just kind of the process right now that we're taking, and with our portfolios, is just beginning that gardening process because, again, the technical analysis is uncertain. The outlook is a bit uncertain over the next month. So being a little bit cautious here certainly doesn't hurt. Now, that doesn't mean be overly cautious and be bearish, right? It just means be a little bit cautious. Speaking of gardening, my wife and I have been watching this show on Amazon Prime called Clarkson's Farm. Did I talk about this already? Have I told you about this? This is the funniest show on the planet. Jeremy Clarkson, who used to be the host for Top Gear, spent years traveling around the world and driving fast cars and doing a show called Top Gear and was very famous for that. He's a British guy. If you don't know who Jeremy Clarkson is, look up Top Gear. He had a very neat gig as this host of Top Gear, driving Bugattis and Ferraris and everything else. Well, he's retired from that, and he now owns a farm in the UK and knows nothing about farming. And there's 3 seasons on Amazon Prime called Clarkson's Farm. And by the way, the soundtrack is awesome if you love 70s and 80s music. Great soundtrack. But he is farming his own farm with his girlfriend Lisa and a couple of other buddies, and everything that could possibly go wrong goes wrong. And and the best part about it is that he has all these great ideas about how to make money off the farm. And he's got a guy named Charlie that shows up and says, you can't do that because there's some government regulation. Every time he has an idea, it's like, well, you can't do that. You've got to get a license. You've got to get a permit. You can't do this because of some regulation. And it's freaking hysterical. So if you want a good laugh, just watch Clarkson's Farm. If you haven't seen it on Amazon Prime, it's well worth the price of admission for having an Amazon account. But again, it's the story of him learning how to farm and all the things that goes wrong. And of course, him trying to sell his knockoff candle. Of course, remember Gwyneth Paltrow sold her famous candle. Yeah, he has this candle smells like my buttocks that he's trying to sell. So anyway, it's on Amazon Prime. Highly recommend it. It's actually hysterical. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We appreciate it very much. Be sure and like and subscribe to the channel, and also send us any questions, comments, emails you have. If you want, to see those charts that we talked about today, go to the website, realinvestmentadvice.com, click on the newsletter link under the Insights tab. All the charts are there for you with a deeper explanation of what's going on. If you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, I certainly encourage you to do that. It comes out every Saturday. Keep you up to date with all the market technicals, analysis, statistics, and more. It's all at the website, realinvestmentadvice.com. Have a great day.